So what I'd like to do now is invite Simon McKeon to the stage, and we'll be conducting a short interview with Simon, which we're actually going to be putting on the member passport community. So, so Simon, please make your way to the stage. Not that Simon needs much of an introduction, but Simon is Executive Chairman of Macquarie Group's Melbourne office and was the 2011 Australian of the Year. He is also Chairman of CSIRO, Business for Millennium Development, Global Poverty Project Australia, Into Science, and the federal government's panel, which in February 2013 completed a strategic review of health and medical research. Simon is also a director of AMP Limited and Red Dust Role Models. He is also a founding patron of the Australian Olympic sailing team, which won 2 gold and a silver medal at the 2008 Beijing Olympics, and 3 gold and a silver medal, and was the leading sailing nation at the 2012 London Olympics. So Simon, please have a seat. As I'm sure you'll all agree, that's a pretty impressive bio, Simon. So I guess I'd be interested to hear your perspective in terms of young leaders and what you look for in a young leader today.
Natasha, I think what I really look for in a young leader, I'm assuming a certain amount of competency and having the smarts and all that sort of stuff. But let me just say quickly before I do answer the question, the world is in great need of leaders, and we don't have enough of them. And more and more need to be young people as well, because the world is changing, and there are too many organisations that don't, for example, embed digitalisation centrally in what the organisation needs to do. One of many, many examples I could give, and it's actually young people that need to be enthusiastic and infecting organisations with that sort of thinking. But to answer the question, Natasha, I think that what I look for in young people is firstly those that are people that are very comfortable in their own skins and leading for the right reasons. Namely, it's not a matter of getting yourself up a ladder and making yourself look a little bit better than the person who's in the desk next to you, but actually focused on what the leadership objective is. Simply trying to do one's best, being passionate, enthusiastic, and in a way, leaving your own ego, yourself, to last. I get very worried about young people, I think, who are just, my kids call them tryhards. They're just kind of anxious about their own position. All I know is that the best actually young or old leaders are those that don't think about their own position that much and just focus on what really needs to be done.
And I guess every industry is getting more and more competitive, but particularly, I guess, the industry that we're all in, financial services. But what are the key skill areas that you look for, I guess, in young finance professionals that perhaps they need to develop these days?
Natasha, the obvious, skill areas are things like just numeracy and increasingly understanding what the rules are, regulation, legislation. If you're in the banking area, understanding what Basel rules are, all this sort of stuff. But I'm actually taking all of that as assumed. What I really look for in a leader is actually increasingly people skills. When I think about it on the political stage, and I don't know who I'm going to offend now, but the Prime Minister before Abbott, he wasn't there for all that long, but there was a classic textbook example of someone who had issues in relation to dealing with people. And I say that publicly. If Kevin Rudd was in the room, I'd be happy to talk to him about it. But, all I'm saying is that don't ever underestimate your people skills, being empathetic, dealing with people, with complete integrity, understanding where they're coming from, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Leadership is not pointing your finger and telling people to do stuff, not nowadays. We're all too well educated, too well opinionated. There's all sorts of reasons why the didactic way of leadership has really, I think, come and gone. But it's a matter of working with people, doing everything possible to get the very best out of, those that, in theory, we're leading.
I guess that's really good advice for everyone to take. So in terms of advice, Simon, what would you say was the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
I've received lots and lots of advice. I think actually, yeah, I think the best advice in business has been, it's pretty trite, but, always look for the win-win. You mentioned the yachting bit before. I've sailed many races, and the idea is obviously to get across the line first, to actually be the winner. It's not like that in business. I think that the best advice I've always been given is try and think of those ideas, those solutions that are going to make everyone feel a winner. Now, it's very trite, but let me tell you that whenever I slip into the mode of saying the only way out of this is to crucify the opposition, it typically ends in tears. They, for some reason, always have tricks up their sleeve that I could never have envisaged, and it's better to actually always think, how can we really get out of this together, all looking good.
And I guess if you were entering the industry today, would you have changed your career path? I mean, obviously you're highly successful, both on a personal and professional footing. So
I think I've just bored tables 13 and 14 with...
I don't think bored would have been the
answer. I won't give the whole ramble now, but, in a nutshell, I've never had any clear strategy as to what I ought to do. And it goes right back to secondary school, as the guys down there will appreciate. But, for me, there was no clear pathway. I didn't have a parent who said, you've got to do this or you've got to do that. And funnily enough, where I've ended up, courtesy of the finance industry, which I never had any intention of ending up in the first place, is actually, to be a privileged member of an industry which pervades every aspect of human endeavour. I mean, the need for finance, financial advice, debt, whatever, is a fundamental commodity. And what happens is that if you're privileged to be part of this industry and perhaps go a little way up the ladder, you end up having contact with this very, very wide slice of society. And, in my case, I did a lot of commercial work, did some government privatisations, whatever, and at a relatively young age, just ended up having this privileged position of knowing lots of people, initially around Melbourne and then on the national stage and perhaps a bit globally nowadays. And, for me, someone who stumbled into the finance sector without a great strategy plan, of course, nowadays I do all sorts of different things outside of finance as well. And the key to it is that I've ended up with all these wonderful relationships right around the country. And I'm continually trying to put people together, outstanding people in government with, say, people in the non-for-profit sector, trying to break down silos, trying to get some cross-fertilisation between these great societal sectors so that good things can happen. It all came out of just having to work in this industry where I was pushed out into so many different areas.
Now, Simon, I know that you're an inspiration to many people. Who would you cite as being your biggest inspiration?
Well, if we've got an entirely open perspective...
Well, maybe career and personally.
If it's confined to career, I'm going to be a bit self-serving here. There have been a couple of very senior people in Macquarie. They've left for years, but there was a CEO, Tony Berg, probably some of you have never even heard of him, but he was an important CEO during its formative years, and he was inspirational because he drove a risk culture, which is sometimes quite hard in an investment bank, which many years after he'd left just meant that, in many respects, and I know the world is a relative place, but the GFC was not a problem for Macquarie. In fact, our problem's always been that we probably had too conservative a balance sheet, which, constrained EPS. And all I'm saying is that the risk culture that he drove was important. And the other thing that I would say is that he was the first person who impressed upon me the importance that any conversation, any note you write, email, etc., could end up on the back page of the Fin Review. He said that in 1984 to me. And I think that piece of advice I have never, ever forgotten. And of course, in this era where social media is just kind of wild. And the temptation, particularly for younger people, just to, share, not ourselves because I'm not young anymore, but to share yourselves, publicly. We just have to be incredibly careful that, all this stuff is written down and kept somewhere in big servers, and one needs to be incredibly careful for all sorts of reasons about anything that, one chooses to say. The other quick one is David Clark, who was a former chairman of Macquarie, and he was the guy that I guess impressed upon me that, you only live once, and, if you feel called to do nothing else in life other than to be successful in business and climb up a ladder, that's fine. There's no law that suggests you shouldn't do that. But he was a pretty successful guy. He really got Macquarie Bank going in the first place. But if he was in this room, sadly he died 3 or 4 years ago, but if he was in this room and he was allowed to talk about one thing, he would talk about the importance of engaging with the community sector and using business cleverly to do that without compromising profit. And he was probably at a very early age a guy that opened my eyes to see, well, can I two-time? Can I actually be a successful business person, but at the same time, in a creative, clever way, try and take our opportunities to, help a hurting world as well.
So I know obviously personally and professionally you live a very varied, full life. What would you say some of the challenges you face every day are?
Well, I think today, and look, I'm going to share this challenge with everyone in the room. It's just how do we spend our time? It's as hard for me today as it was 30 years ago as a young investment banker in short pants. Just too much to do in a given day. And all I can say is, it's important to be obviously well organised and et cetera, but be true to yourselves. Work out what is important to you. Don't do something just because you want to impress the rest of the world. You're the only person you have to live with for your entire life. And, take the time to work out what is right for us, what isn't right for us. Don't try and push the proverbial uphill all the time, especially when we're talking about our own lives. And if in truth we're not cut out to be the CEO of an organisation, that's okay. There's a million other things that we can usefully do. And it's a matter of reassuring ourselves that we are doing whatever we're doing for the right reasons, namely to ensure that we as individuals live the most fulfilled life we can. And I just repeat again, don't forever think that life is about impressing others, because it's not.
Now, look, I could ask many more questions, but I guess there's probably some burning questions from the floor. In the interest of time, we've probably just got time for one or two more. So I'll throw it open to the floor. Does anyone have a question for Simon? Yes.
You sort of touched on this on the last response, but I actually lost track of all of the things that you've got your finger in doing, and I'm just wondering how you manage to, I suppose, find time for yourself and your family, find time for your family.
The same question came up on one of the tables down there. Look, the CV looks long and impressive and all that sort of stuff, but actually, you guys can go to sleep now for a couple of minutes. I'm a really average person. I really am. I'm not that good when I'm left by myself to do anything, and I've just ended up in this fabulous position over many years of being part of little teams. Boards here, little groups that got something going. I've really never done anything by myself. And, for me, the biggest issue was, and this is a question I really faced 15 or 20 years ago, is this a path I go down? I'm not really sure. I didn't talk to anyone. There weren't that many role models that had done this stuff before, but it seemed right in my own tummy. It wasn't that hard a decision. I mean, let's face it, I had been at Macquarie for many years. There was always food on my family's table. I was, in a reasonably good financial shape. Actually, it was more the professional challenge. Was this a path that really wouldn't work? Can you be a part-time investment banker? All this sort of stuff. And to get to your point, the priorities worked themselves out over time when I realised that one could do this. I couldn't have done it if I was in a small organisation which was highly dependent on me. I did it because part of my job when I was running Macquarie here in Melbourne was to recruit people, and I tried to recruit the very best people I could they were better than me, and in the end, it was easy for me to let them do most of the work, and I then allowed myself to roam all over the place, pursuing causes that actually were right for me.
Well, thank you, Simon, for giving up your time to come and share those insights with us this evening. So can everyone join me in thanking Simon? And here's a small appreciation. Thank you. And now I'd like to invite Sonia Petering, who's chair of the Rural Finance Corporation and the TAC, to the stage. Sonia Petering was appointed to the Rural Finance Corporation Board on the 1st of July 2003 and was appointed Deputy Chair on the 18th of December 2007 and has served as Chair since 2009. Sonia is a qualified practicing lawyer with law and commerce degrees from the University of Melbourne. Sonia has worked in both Melbourne and in regional Victoria and has her own legal practice based in Geelong. She is also a non-executive director of the Transport Accident Commission. Please welcome Sonia. Have a seat. So again, Sonia has a very impressive career to date, but I guess, Sonia, yours has perhaps been a more untraditional career path into financial services, starting off as a lawyer. I guess, looking back on your career, is there anything that you would have perhaps done differently?
Thank you, Natasha. And
Oh, sorry.
Oops, this one, yeah. She was making some signs over there and I couldn't work out the hand language. Thank you, Natasha, for the opportunity to be here, and thank you to Finsia for inviting me to come along to speak with you tonight. And I feel quite humble being on the stage after Simon McKeon, who's just an average bloke and not that great, really, according to Simon. So, you know, I too have had, I guess, as you say, an untraditional entry into the financial sector, and I feel very privileged to have had the opportunities that I've been presented. And in that course of that, my career, I've met so many wonderful people, and you know, rich people, poor people, smart people, influential people, imposing people, scary people, and you get to meet amazing people. So I guess looking back, is there anything I would have done differently to answer your question? Not really. I take the premise that I'm grateful for what I have, and I don't continue to look about what I haven't got. And I think that is the source of contentment. And I guess practicing gratitude is something that I try and do and teach my two children, who are 15 and 12, and I believe me, there is a list of things they don't have. Not really, but according to them it is. So I think when you're grateful, you give your time, you give your energy, you give love, and you give compassion, you give kindness, and maybe money to sources like Dry July. And I think then you can start to give the best of yourself and in your job and relationships. And I think if I look back, I've had some wonderful opportunities and I feel very grateful for that. So I grew up on a farm up in the Wimmera, a place called Minyip. Anyone heard of Minyip? Oh, 1, 2. So 3. So we've had, I grew up on a wheat and sheep farm, and my family didn't, have a sort of history of going to university. So when I got accepted into Melbourne University and did 2 degrees, I did commerce and law, and as you rightfully point out, I'm still practicing to be a lawyer. So I guess that was a great opportunity for me. And then I did join the finance industry when in 2003 I was approached by the then chairman, Donald McGeechy, who wanted a smart rural woman to join the board. So I thought about who I'd know to be able to introduce him to someone. And then, look, it just happened. I mean, I was asked to be deputy chair and then chair in 2009, and it's been a great learning. I mean, I've learnt a lot about myself being chair and how to support the organisation and how to influence culture at the top. And we talked about in our table choosing the right CEO. It's those amazing, important decisions that I've had a great opportunity. So, not really, but I do value education and continuing learning, because I think if we continue to enhance our skills and continue learning, we can then give back to the community in which we live, and that certainly is something that's important to me. So maybe I'd do more learning, probably something formal like an MBA or an advanced management program, but I'm sure there's still time.
Very good. So I guess, probably talking to the leaders on your tables tonight, I think also with what Sonia and indeed Simon have said, there's nothing like a set career path these days. Everybody's got to be quite flexible, I think, when it comes to your career. So like Simon, I'd be interested to hear, Sonia, in terms of what you look for in terms of young leaders.
Yeah, and I was interested to hear what Simon said about people management. I think that's absolutely right. So if I think about, looking for young leaders, and at Rural Finance Corporation, where I'm chair, we've run a great program over the last 20 years for scholarship. We've been funding 6 undergraduate students a year, $6,000, which is a lot to a student, and I know that. And we've also just expanded that to vocational studies and to 1 postgraduate. So I guess we know how to, and we think we can pick good leaders, and we're really proud of the opportunity that we've been able to provide these young people in funding some of their hopes and dreams. But if I think back to, what are the criteria that I look for, it's things like energy and an ability to take ownership of things. I'm firmly of the belief that you don't need to be at the top of the organisation to be a leader, that you can be a leader in any role that you are and to do the best job you can in that role and to motivate others around you. And I mean, Simon pointed out, be a leader for the right reasons. So I think that the quality of curiosity is also a great skill to have. Tell me about that rather than sort of be dictatorial in it. A balance between being decisive and being humble is also something I look for. And I also say to younger people in a networking meeting or if you're meeting someone for the first time, I think one of the most important questions you can ask is, what can I do for you? Because if you're coming along there thinking that this person's going to open up doors and give you great opportunities, I mean, that might be right. But someone once said to me, if you ask for help, you'll get advice. And if you ask for advice, you'll get help. So if you go along to these meetings and say, well, thanks for your time, what can I do for you, is a great example of how you might be able to showcase leadership.
That's absolutely right, Sonia. So what would you say has been your greatest achievement?
I'm the mother of 2 children, aged 15 and 12, as I said before, so my family would have to be my greatest personal achievement. Look, I'm fortunate that they're happy and don't have health issues, and they're values-based, and they feel, that I'm grateful for them every day. So I guess also coming from country Victoria, where I didn't have a family that went to university, I feel proud of the achievement of being able to achieve, to get my 2 degrees, and feel very privileged for the opportunities that I've been given. So I guess they're the 2 achievements, and a bit like Simon was referring to, I certainly acknowledge that I haven't done this by myself. I mean, I've had a great team, I've got a great supportive husband, I've got great family support, I've got terrific people on my boards that I work with and who have fantastic skill, and I reckon they're all smarter than me too. So, working with a team, I guess the key for me is, pick a good team.
Okay, and so do you have one piece of advice you would give to someone wanting to make it in the financial services industry?
I was thinking about this question, Natasha, and I think as a community, we're always after the one thing, and there is no one answer. There's no silver bullet. There's no answer to be thinner or richer or smarter or, greater opportunities. So I think you need to do the work that you have to, that you're set out to do to then advance. So Simon spoke about integrity, and I absolutely believe that too. And when I join an organisation, and particularly a board, I go in saying, I want to leave this place in a better place than it was when I started. So I think if you aspire to ensure that those of you that you work with and you care for are better for having known you, and the organisations that you work with and for are better in a better state than when you left, I mean, that has to be, I guess, the one piece of advice that I would encourage. The Dalai Lama was asked that question recently, and I read that he suggested the one piece of advice that would lead to a happy life is to keep working at it. So, I mean, that's interesting that someone like the Dalai Lama is continually working on that. And every day, in every minute, in every decision, you have to make a choice about you know, are you going to be happy or not with this? Are you going to be grateful for this opportunity, or are you going to whinge about it? So if every day and every minute you start thinking about, well, you know, how can I cultivate my generosity or compassion and concern for others, then, you know, the whole theme is about life is long term. It's a marathon, it's not a sprint. So the one piece of advice would be keep working at it like the Dalai Lama and aspire to leave the organisation that you're with in a better place.
Great advice, Sonia Petering and Dalai Lama.
Oh, yes, yeah, thank you for that.
And just to round the interview up, I guess, you know, social media, there's so much information at our fingertips these days, but how do you stay up to date with ideas and trends? In the opportunity, in the position I'm in, got great access to information through the two organisations that I'm on the board of. So obviously that's a source of intel of some source, but look, many ways. If you're not learning, you're dying, really. So the Finsia passport is a great email I didn't pay her.
that I do look through. I wouldn't say read, but I do scan for interesting other blogs. I read The Conversation most days. That's a not-for-profit blog that I find, you know, quite interesting. Obviously newspapers and, you know, professional development. I'm a member of the Australian Institute of Company Directors, as probably a lot of you are here tonight. So I attend my, I was going to say compulsory, but that's probably not the right word. I do attend a number of development opportunities that they provide. Things like the tier one, you know, accounting firms, and the two on the table that I was with tonight do great lunches. I went to one yesterday on data analytics and data visualisation and how you can report on those things. So, and networking, catching up with other people who always offer some type of insight. I think there's a quote saying, small minds talk about people, medium minds talk about things, and big minds talk about ideas. So if you can, you know, when you catch up with someone, have a chat about current developments in your industry or people's views about things. And being a leader, if you can come to a coffee or a network having had an idea or a thought or an opinion on a new piece of legislation or an inquiry that's coming, you know, into your industry, if you can meet for coffee and you have a view on that, it's a terrific way then of being able to talk at ideas and strategic level rather than necessarily gossiping about people, which I think is just a waste of time. So I guess those sort of opportunities are there to keep up to date with trends and ideas, but gosh, there's a lot of information and it's about the insight from all that data that we've got. So.
Well, thank you, Sonia. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for a short break. So please go and enjoy some Finsia hospitality in the foyer. And then if I could ask you all to come back in here for 7:50, we'll start the final two mentoring sessions. Before we do, please join me in thanking Sonia Petering.